Welcome to Vibes Revealed,
a podcast dedicated to pulling back the veil around wellness with your hosts,
Taylor McKiska
and Jay Tollett.
We believe living well is for everyone,
and no topic is taboo. Join us on our journey as we redefine what it means to be truly well in a modern world.
We're celebrating everyday magic,
but always keeping it real.
Let's vibe. We're back.
We're back.
Vibes Revealed, episode 3.
I can't believe it's up episode 3. I can't even speak. This might be an interesting. I had a wild morning.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I will tell you about it. I woke up. Okay, so basically quarantine, I have no life. I have like no real life friends. So on Friday nights, I go to bed at 8 p.m. And so I woke up this morning at like 4:15 and I was like, But then I looked outside my blinds and there was just one very bright star and I knew it was Venus because Venus has been shining bright through my window with the eastern sun for a while now. And I was like, wow, Venus is looking bright today. And I was like, let me do my morning routine. And then I was like, actually, I should just go outside and do it all underneath the heavens. So I did like this 30-minute wild breathwork practice that like involved like very large breaths and 2-minute holds. And I was like basically tripping. And then I did a Qigong meditation and I was just like actively moving energy through all of my internal organs to do some cleansing. And then I did a really fun workout class and I just was like dancing around in my backyard and my neighbor was like, "You looking alive today, Jay?" And I was like, "I'm feeling it." And then I did a mask and now my face is soft like a baby's butt. And so I feel like I've, done my work for the day.
That sounds heavenly, just divine.
How was your day? How was your morning? I should ask.
A little different. So I woke up and made coffee.
That's your ritual.
That is my ritual. Coffee is definitely my ritual. I do pour over every day with my Chemex. I love coffee. So yeah, got up, made coffee, and then Joey got up, and we've really been on this kick for the past few days about like going to Japan. Like that's all we've talked about is like, oh yeah, when we go to we have no absolutely no solid plans, but it's just been like, yeah, so when we go to Japan, we're gonna do this, we're gonna go here, it's gonna be so cute. Yeah, so basically it was like I got up, made coffee, and then Joey got up a little while later and we talked about just like going to Japan literally until this call. So
wait, but you guys know that I was planning on going to Japan, right?
Yeah.
I was supposed to be in Japan for months, so we all do it together.
Yeah.
And I just joined in on your couples trip.
Yeah, we have wanted to go for a really long time, and it's one of those I am not a traveler. Like I have not traveled a lot. I have not left the country. I've never done any sort of big trips. It was just like not financially available to me to travel like that. And it was something that I always we can definitely get into this today. Yeah. Talking about shadow work. I have a lot of shame around that I haven't been able to travel. But that was kind of what we were talking about this morning was like, oh, when everything is safe and clear and good to go, we would love to go to Japan and spend some time there. And
yes.
So that was my morning.
I mean, that's an equally good morning. The inner work is as good. I was doing a lot of outer work. I was literally putting clay masks on my face and you were doing inner work. And that's beautiful. Card of the Convo.
Let's do it. I love this. I feel like we're about to get in a flow. Card of the Convo.
We're into the groove now.
3rd episode.
Fun. Oh yeah. Should I remind everyone? Card of the Convo is, we decided that to set I'm going to put a buzzword in quotations, but to set the container for this space, we wanted to pick a card at the beginning of each convo and then have it be a guiding light or something that we continue to come back to as we move throughout the conversation. So with that being said.
Yeah. All right. So our card of the convo is Two of Wands reversed.
Ooh.
So far also we have only pulled reversals
Reversals.
for our card of the convo. What really came up for me around this was sort of the idea of that you have to be in agreement about things, you know? And I think that that is super important for us, especially as we continue these conversations around buzzwords and around sort of the complications in the wellness space in this Two of Wands. So seeing it as really a mirror, recognizing our place in it, recognizing my place in it, even saying right now, like, yeah, I use all of these words all the time. I use them daily. This is like Two of Wands reversed. I'm coming from a place of, I want to recognize my part in it. I want to recognize that the thing that maybe I'm criticizing is probably something I do. In this case, it definitely is. It is seeing the inspiration coming from a place of passion. I feel like when Two of Wands is upright, it's like this like fiery, harmonious experience in the mirror. You know, Two of Wands and
Actually, that really just struck a chord.
yeah, and I feel like Two of Wands reversed is sort of seeing that what I want to see versus what's actually there, and like making peace with that, acknowledging it, owning your part in something.
Okay, that feels really good.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like that's I'm actually so glad that this came up because I was thinking about that, especially listening back to our first episode, and I was like, I really want to say like I do this. Like I use these words all the time. You know?
Yes.
And like the biggest reason I think it's so important to talk about it is because I know it's something I do, and it's not that I want to like defend myself around it. It's like I really want to explore my own biases and experiences and like match them against someone who may have a totally different experience than me, and still coming back to a place of being able to like understand each other.
Wow. Something that just came up for me when you were giving that beautiful description that like made me have chills multiple times. But it's interesting that we're talking about shadow work today.
Yes.
Because maybe it's like Two of Wands upright is you're looking into the mirror, and Two of Wands reverse is you're looking at your shadow. It's still you, and it moves in the way that you move, and it moves in those reverse directions just like a mirror would. But then it's like something that you're like, oh, maybe it's not, maybe the light's not shining on it fully. Maybe it's something that I'm a little bit about.
Totally.
Wow. Well, the card speaks for itself yet again.
Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about shadow work. So that's the word we're diving into today.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's someone going in and out of my garage. My alarm system will not ever let you sneak out of the house, but that's what's happening. I was hoping the mic wouldn't pick it up, but it might happen from time to time. An exterminator going around my house, making sure that the house is safe. So
Love that.
Let's start over. Okay, let's talk about shadow work.
Yes. Should we read our definition, the one that we put on the?
Oh yes. Do you have it up?
I can get it up very quickly.
Okay.
How are you loving your new computer also?
I'm like loving it. I'm like really using both of my computers right now because you know when you get something new and you're like, I should only use it a little bit. I should only like use it a tiny bit.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I am not that person. And I think that that's also like a totally okay way to be. Like I'm the type of person that when I get something new, I will, like when I get new clothes and stuff, I'll literally wear it the moment I get it.
Yeah.
Like, right away. I won't wash it. I'll just like rip the tags off and put it on immediately.
But I'm like a reckless owner. So like if I don't ease into my ownership, then shit just hits the fan really quick. Like I like to take my computer outside and do workouts outside. So when I do my workouts outside, I don't take my shiny new computer because I'm like, oh, that's like I can see myself like tripping and like it falling into the pool and me being like, oh no. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just know myself enough to know that like shit's not going to get taken care of. So like as long as I have that like muscle in me that's twitching like take care of your thing, take care of your thing, I'm like better hang on to that before that sound goes away. That voice will
Yeah.
go away very very soon because that is who I am.
But it's like if you know, then you can support that
That's
in
part of my
yourself.
shadow.
There you go.
Ooh,
Okay, so
we're going to get
let's,
into this.
yes, shadow work. What is it? I think that this is a pretty good definition. The act of exploring an unconscious or repressed aspect of the personality which the conscious ego does not see in itself.
It's a great definition because we wrote it ourselves.
Yeah, I think so.
However, I think one really common misconception about shadow work is that people like to refer to your shadow as the dark side of you or the evil side of you. And that's not true at all. It's not about the good and the bad things. It's about literally what we choose to be aware and conscious of, which is usually the part of our ego that we like to say, hey, this is what makes me me. This is why I'm awesome. This is what I want the world to see about me. And then the shadow side is like, this is the part that I'm trying to hide in those dark corners. They could be good things. Like, for example, if you're like, let's talk about gender stereotypes. Let's just bring that in. Like, if you're a young boy who is really good at dancing and your parents are like, you need to be good at football instead. You'll put you'll put your amazing dance skills into your shadow because you're carrying shame around it because your family says that's not for boys or whatever's going on in your personal life. And that's a really good way to highlight the fact that shadow isn't necessarily the bad part. It's just the part that you're not shining light on.
The way I really like to think about this type of work is that I go heavy into the metaphors, but I always had sort of I've had a lot of difficulty with like shadow because I think that I always think of shadow as something that you can't like catch. Like it's not,
Mm,
it's like this, you can see it, and but it's not the same as working with like physical body, like that I can,
mm,
when I feel like it almost puts it in this different mental bucket to think of it as shadow work.
mm-hmm,
Shadow, this thing I can't really grasp onto. um so when I am thinking about doing this work, I like to think of myself as like as if I were made of, if I were a rock, or if I were like a piece of a mountain, and there are all these like cracks, right? There are little cracks
mm.
in the mountain, and that's natural because stuff grows out of them, stuff falls into them. And so like maybe that is all me if I'm that, right? And I feel like doing this work is like pouring water into those spaces that I might not be able to reach with my hand. Like I can't
Mm,
reach into that crack
mm.
and pull something out of it, but there's stuff deep inside of there. So it's like if I can pour the water into it, so maybe it can rise up. And
Yes.
that's how I like to think of it when I'm about to do this work, is like I'm not trying to like catch my shadow. I'm trying to unearth what is already a part of me.
Ah, that's beautiful. It's
Thanks.
funny, you're a water person.
I am.
You're
I'm
a
a
water
water
person and
person.
you use that water metaphor very beautifully.
Thank you.
And I'm a fire person and my my response to, cuz I agree it's hard to catch your shadow and it's just something that kind of hangs out next to you and you never really have full control over it, but I like to think of like instead of the sun being just this thing that rises and falls, I like to think of myself as having control of the sun that shines on me. Like I
Mm.
hold this fire in my hands and then I recognize the fact that the only time that my shadow isn't escaping me or is growing away from me is when the sun is directly on top of my head. So it's like I choose to hold up this light and shine it directly over all of me so that all of me is illuminated and I'm not like only shining it on the side of me that I think is my good side so that other parts of me are in shadow. But that's my fiery approach.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like that's funny because you had a water approach, I had a fire approach, and I think they both really work.
Yeah. They both get us at the same place, which is seeing our whole and full selves for all the things that they are.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we expand on shadow work? Like, first of all, how do you do it? How do you start doing shadow work? I think that's a question.
For sure. When I was introduced to the idea of shadow work, it was actually on Instagram.
Mm.
I started seeing the word, right? The words. I started seeing like shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. And I was like, what is this? And I just Googled, like, what is shadow work? And like, then started clicking around on stuff and I was like, how to do shadow work. And what I really gathered from, all the little things I read was that it was about asking yourself questions. And it was like a full array of questions. It was everything from like simply identifying the things that you don't like about yourself or your actions, which I think is an interesting, and it can be as helpful as it can be detrimental because that's something that we do all the time.
Yes.
Is like we constantly identify things we don't like about ourselves. But I think it's the difference of like an internal, like, what do I not like about the way that I feel about something versus like, it's not about like, oh, I don't like my arms or whatever. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what do I not like about my reaction to a situation? And then asking, okay, so I've identified what I didn't like about my reaction. What about the situation set me off in the first place? And it's just
Yes.
about asking yourself question after question after question
Mm-hmm.
so that you can hopefully get to the root of,
Rabbit holing.
yes, of what's actually deep inside of you.
Absolutely.
That, yeah, you just basically you keep asking yourself questions
Mm-hmm.
until you get to what you can identify as the root of a situation and see how that played out.
Yeah.
I think it's so much easier to do it with situations that have, like past situations, things that have
Mm-hmm.
happened that were upsetting to you, or that also were very like formative.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think it's interesting that you say formative because for me, shadow work is definitely about pulling shit up from the past, but the shit that still is coming up, whether you ask it to or not.
Yes.
Like, when you're in the shower and you think about that embarrassing moment in the ninth grade and you're like, why the fuck is that still affecting me?
Yeah,
That shadow, you know what I mean?
for
But for
sure.
me, I think if anyone asks me like how to approach shadow work, identification, sure, self-awareness, let's call it self-awareness, is very integral. And so many people will say that like self-awareness is the most important thing. And I'm like, mm, not quite. Self-awareness is just like the state of being aware that it's there. Now it's like, what are you going to do with it? And that's the work. So it's like shadow, sure, find the light, shine it on there, and then look, oh, it's in shadow. Like, how do I bring light to it? And so I think for me, shadow work really starts with examining triggers.
Yeah.
Examining triggers, like, and it can be anything like your boyfriend says one thing the wrong way and you're just mad. Like you go from like having an okay day to just being mad. And I think a lot of our natural tendencies is to just stay in that anger. And we're like, okay, like it'll go away. But I think when you're in the process of doing shadow work, and shadow work really needs to be like, it's a period of time in your life. You can't do it every day. It's exhausting. It expends you emotionally. But when you're in that period of time that you're doing shadow work, I really feel like it's every trigger that comes up, you say, okay, in this instant, this bothered me, but what is it about this one word that he said or this one instant that happened? And what is the root of that? So then saying, okay, this trigger, what feeling is that actually bringing up in me? I know it's not about the fact that he left the dish in this place, even though that's what I'm choosing to have a visceral reaction to. But what is it about the dish? And then what is it about that feeling about the dish, and then keeping on rabbit holing into there. So I feel like step one for me when I'm saying, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm doing shadow work, I keep a journal or I keep a voice note, not a voice note, a note memo in my phone or on my computer. And every time someone says something and I feel triggered, I feel like someone pushed a button or I feel like something hit a nerve or I suddenly want to cry or someone really hurt my feelings when all they did was make a joke, I just write down all those triggers. And you have many. You think, oh, like, oh, I'll write down a couple triggers a day. No, the list gets really long and overwhelming, and you're like, shit. And then you take it down at night and you're like, okay, now I journal through this. Now I go back into the past and see, where have I reacted in the same way to this similar type of trigger before? And it could be across many relationships. It could be throughout the trails of your friendships. It could be all throughout your childhood in your relationship with your family. But you start to see those patterns, and then patterning the patterns is
Yeah.
like step 2, I guess.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I also think that shadow work can come in many forms. And we sort of see it as sometimes this like process, as if we are actually going to truly get to the bottom.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like you could just keep digging and digging and digging and digging, and you could get into like past life stuff and being energetically attached to something in a past life or in someone else's space, something that you're picking up. And I think that that's another thing too, is at some point it's kind of like you have to create a boundary for yourself of like what you said before of like, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to dive into this,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't just end up in a place of like feeling totally like all over the place of like,
Yeah.
there are so many. I think it's easy with shadow work to be like, there are so many things that have happened that might have developed this pattern, and start to feel really bad about that too.
Yes.
So it's I think it's important that when you're doing it, to create some boundaries for yourself around how much time I'm going to spend doing this, even how much time every day I'm going to spend doing this while I do it,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can protect and come back to your own like centered space of who you are.
Absolutely. And also so that you can remember, or not so that you can remember, but so that you can remind yourself that you're capable of coming back to it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go so hard and then be like, I can never do that again. The first time that I did shadow work, it was actually through, I'm not even going to mention the name of the
Mm-hmm.
person's program because that's not even important, but it was someone who had put together a workshop for shadow work. And I think it was a 10-day thing. And by the end of it, I was like, I'm never doing that again. Like, I was like, so there's a portion in it where you literally, it's like reach out to the 5 closest people in your life and ask them to tell you ways in which you've hurt them unintentionally. Like, it was very like, ow, it hurt, it was hurtful for the other person. It was hurtful for me. I'm like, I don't know why the fuck I did that. But it did really help me to understand and see myself really differently. And I think it propelled like a large season of change
Mm-hmm.
in my life. I made a lot of changes after going through that process, but I really felt towards the end of that, I was like, I can never do that again. And so now I'm reminded of how important it is for us to be gentle with ourselves throughout the entire process. And ultimately, to me, I think I'm not naming, I'm like step 1, step 2. I
Yeah.
haven't created steps yet, but I think the final step is integration of the shadow, acceptance of the shadow, and saying, hey, look, you can't go into it expecting that you're going to uncover and then change. Like
Yeah.
if we're archaeologists of ourselves, like we're just going to uncover what's there. There's no changing it. It's fossilized. So it's like, okay, this is me. This is who I am in here. So I got to find a way to love it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the point. It's not to say, look, I've uncovered this, I can change. Of course you can change. There's parts of you that you can shine the light on it differently. You can allow it to be out of the shadow and be in full light, but it still is what it is. So until you can accept it and say, this is how it works for me, this is the ways I know that it will come up and work against me, but I can avoid those situations, or I can be honest with my partner or with my loved one about, this is a situation that triggers me and I prefer not to put myself in these situations anymore, because now I see that this is the way that I'm going to react to it. And that's
Yeah.
dialogue with, the external world. Once you're done doing your internal work, it's part of it is being like, hey, this is in shadow for me, and This is how it be. Sorry.
Yeah. I think something that's also that I have found to be really helpful, and not that this is like an excuse or a way out of identifying your own and kind of grappling with your own internal stuff, but something that when I start to get in that place of just like, I don't like this about myself, this is what's wrong with me, I don't like that I do this, I don't like that I react in this way, asking myself, do I not like me? Or am I trying to meet a societal expectation
Mm-hmm.
in this thing? I procrastinate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I'm on, I am on. And when I have stuff to do, I feel amazing. I feel super lit up by it. I feel really excited. But I have a really hard time sustaining the kind of work that I do. Feeling like I could, we kind of talked about this the other day, feeling like I could keep going and going and going and going. And I found myself getting really upset by when I would have these days that my focus would be pulled, and then I would start giving energy to something, or I would see someone else's work and feel like upset that I wasn't doing it, or I would feel
Oh.
upset that that I wasn't working as hard, or I wasn't creating enough, right?
Mm.
So then I started to feel like that's something I should dive into in me. Like I want to explore why it upsets me when I
Mm-hmm.
see someone else working.
Yeah.
But then I asked myself, like, is this me, or am I just not meeting this like capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal, societal expectation of the way that I
Mm-hmm.
work?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing to ask when you start to get into this place of like, why am I like this?
Yeah.
Or where did I learn this? And you
Yes.
could definitely say like, yeah, I learned this pattern from my family, or I learned this pattern from a series of disagreements I had with my friends in high school or whatever. But a lot of times too, it might just be that you're not meeting a societal expectation,
Totally.
and that's not something wrong with you. That's
Totally.
actually something that's really powerful to like disengage with meeting an expectation.
Yeah. And that could be the root, you know? Like it's
Exactly.
like you think the root is something in you that's, oh, this is what's wrong with me. At my core, this is what's wrong with me. And then you're like, no, this is just what's not matching up with society. I mean, often I think the question is kind of like this is what came up for me when you said that was just like, is it something that I don't like about myself, or am I just worried about how I am perceived?
Yes.
And that's always going to be a huge battle because you just can't control how you are perceived. And some
Yeah.
people are going to love the way you act and the way you work and the way that you just go with the flow. And I have a very similar kind of emotional experience with work as you. And oftentimes people have been like, wow, Jay, I love how you just go where the wind takes you. I love how you're no worries all the time. I'm like, is that what you're seeing? No worries? Because in me, I'm like, why am I like this? Why can't I get anything done? Why am I so sub inferior to everyone? Why can't I just stay with a job? Why can't I just like, and it's like, it's shadow for me, but everyone else is out here thinking, wow, what a life, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's interesting that it could go in the reverse direction too, where it's like society is seeing you as something special. And as long as you're in your head thinking, society doesn't think this is right about me, I need to change it, even though they're out here screaming, go you. It's like, work on that. Like that
Yeah.
shadow work, you know, because there's clearly a disconnect. And a lot of times I think in that definition of shadow work that we have, where it's like these are unconscious disconnects and we don't realize that these things are not that bad, you know, like this is
Yes.
not a bad thing about you, it's just something that you've labeled as this bad thing about you, and that's what's causing the the struggle.
Right. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of things about pieces of ourselves that we either subconsciously or consciously choose not to share that
Mm.
are actually some of the most like valuable things about ourselves.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it's really interesting. I think for me, like one of my what I would call a like shadow quality is I really struggle with being secretive. Like there's like the public piece of me that I share in a very calculated way,
Mm.
you know, and that's hard to admit too. Like that is sort of a that's worth having a dialogue with myself about, like, why am I willing to show up in just this way? But there's a lot that I keep secret.
Yeah.
And I like secrets. I like when people tell me secrets, and I am like, I will, if someone's like, don't tell anyone, I won't say
Yeah.
a word. But it's sort of that two of wands reversed. It plays in both ways because there's a lot about myself I'm not willing to share, that I keep it secret. I keep it
Yeah.
in those places that I'm like, oh, no one can see this. And I take secrets really seriously. So that's something I think too. Shadow work, we think about it as these things of like, this happened to me when I was a kid, and so I need to uncover where that came from. And then, you know, my friend did this and someone said that. But shadow can be those pieces of ourselves that just like, why am I so secretive? And
Yeah.
what is it about secrets that I value in this way, both my own and other people's? So
Yeah.
that's kind of that's what I'm working on
Wow.
in
I
my
mean, I'm like,
shadow
now
right
I'm like,
now.
shit, she's coming out. She's sharing. I need to start sharing.
No, but it's like, that's even that is like, that was a very vague way to say that, you know. That was a very vague way to tell you that I'm a secretive person. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but that I also think the perception of me though is that I'm really open.
Yeah.
But it's also
That's
like, I don't know, I could be totally wrong in that that's how people perceive me. But it's an interesting thing to think about that. And the more kind of work I do around it, I think I am able to get into those sort of spaces where I'm like, it's not always from that I can pinpoint that to like one traumatic event,
mm,
or that I can pinpoint it all. If I dig and dig and dig and dig, I don't know that I'm going to be able to get that down to one moment.
mm-hmm.
But I do think it's something that I could spend a couple weeks really asking myself how that developed when I first started keeping secrets, both my own and other people's. I could ask myself when I knew I was overhearing information that I wasn't necessarily supposed to, and how that made me feel, and why I felt like I needed to keep that to myself. Like there are a lot of questions there that I can really dig into.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a part of myself that right now I'm like, I don't love that about, it's like, I don't love that about me, but I would like to love that about
Yeah.
myself and see how it can evolve, not necessarily fully change, because I think it's valuable to
Mm-hmm.
have someone's confidence that you will hold
Yes.
their information. But I don't love how secretive I am, and
Yeah.
the way that I curate what I share. So
Wow. No,
bit of a
that was
tangent, but
no,
that's sort
that
of
was
the work that I'm doing right now.
I loved that. Because
Thanks.
I feel like that's like something that's very similar in me, but I feel like okay, shadow for me. I'm going to go into mine because
Yeah.
you did it and now I want to do it. And maybe that's the beauty of sharing. But I mean, I actually was just doing shadow work. Oh God, I just pulled up the list. I pulled up the list of triggers. I have a lot of shadow around thinking that I'm not a good person and I'm not a good friend.
Mm.
And I know people will look at me and be like, "Jay, that is ridiculous." But I ask myself, are you a good person? Are you are you doing a good job of being a good friend, a good daughter, a good sister? And everything in my mind is like there's just this long list of like how to be a good person, and the list is so long that you couldn't possibly do all the things on that list. But everything that I don't do, I'm like, check one against me, you know, like if I don't call my I'm the type of person who like people will tell me, wow, it's like every time I see you, it's like we pick up right where we left off and it's like we never left each other. And then I'm like, in my head, I'm like, but I haven't called you in 9 months. I'm a shit friend. But in their minds, it's like, wow, our friendship is so strong that we don't even have to talk. And in me, I'm like, I'm the worst person. I can't even pick up the phone and call this person on their birthday. I'm bad about people's birthdays. Just that's like, that's in shadow. Like, I'm like, shit, every day is a day. And then I'm like, is it because I'm selfish that I'm bad at remembering monumentous events for other people? But I feel like I'm the type of person who, like, when it's in my spirit, I pick up the phone and I say, you know what? Today's the day to talk to this friend. But I worry that because I can't, you know, stick to the structure of call on a birthday, send flowers when they get pregnant, do, this and that. And this is how you be a good friend. And I feel like I don't check any of those boxes because that's just like not how I be a friend. I try to, but I have other ways of being a friend. And then I'm like, shit, I must not be a good person. And
Mm.
so I think things that I think a lot of my shadow as like it's going to rear its head in moments of being triggered, and I'm going to be like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that reaction to come out, but it did because I haven't worked on this in myself. I haven't grappled, I haven't come to terms with the fact that like me being a good person looks different than the list that I've created in my head of what good people do. And so I have something that comes up for me a lot when I'm doing shadow work. Triggers that come up for me a lot are when people assume that I don't have time to help them. So
Mm.
I think a lot of times, and that's an anxious tendency. And I have a lot of friends who have a lot of anxiety. So if a friend comes to me and says, I know you're really busy, but immediately I react with anger. I say, why would you think I'm too busy to help you? Do you think that I'm a bad person? Do you think that I'm the type of person who's too busy to tend to your needs? And it really triggers me. And then so sometimes my reaction to them is to be like, yeah, I don't have time because you put me in that box. You know what I mean? When really I should be
Yeah.
like, no, I do have time. Why do you think that I don't have time? But it always, my response is anger and like anxiety that, oh, this person thinks I'm a bad person. I know you're really busy, but can you help me? Or it's something that a lot of people seem to think I'm busy, and I'm like, I'm, I'm not busy. But like it's often like even just the notion of, I know you don't really have time for this, but if there's any way, then I get triggered. And I'm like, why do I allow my response to that type of questioning to be like immediate anger? Like I'm immediately angry. I'm like, this person's basically calling me a bad friend.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on because it, I have anxiety, but my anxiety like it manifests in a lot of different ways than other people that have anxiety. A lot of times as just like quick anger.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, that's not good at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's another really important piece of doing any sort of internal work is realizing how your reactions come out
Yeah.
and then examining, like, my reaction is to cry. Going
Mm.
back to that sort of like watery space when someone tells me I did something wrong, when someone is upset with me, even if they're not, like, it's easier for me to handle if someone's like yelling at me.
Yeah.
Like if someone's yelling at me, I'm good. I can go completely blank. I don't take it in. I don't take it personally. When I can feel that someone's disappointed or upset with me, or when someone's accusing me of something, my reaction is to cry. I will
Mm-hmm.
immediately start crying. And that can be so harmful and dangerous for me to come in with my tears. That's something that I'm like, okay, I need to, why do I cry? Like, why is my body having that immediate sort of reaction of tears when I am feeling defensive? And asking myself that, and then seeing if there's any sort of like bodily work I can do to sort of like retrain my brain to not cry when someone's really simply asking me, like, or telling me like, hey, it really upset me that you did this.
Oh my
And me
gosh.
having to be like, this is not something to cry about, don't cry. Like,
Oh my, it's so funny, Taylor, that like you are the water sign and I am the fire sign. And my reaction to all of those situations is to immediately get angry. And I'm like, what is the body? I feel like we can talk about elements in a different
for
episode,
sure.
but just like working with the water in your life and being like, does this have to come out of me in
Yeah.
response to? And for me, it's like, does that fire have to come out in response to, honestly, it's honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Someone being really kind for someone to say, hey, I know that you don't necessarily have time. That's a kind thing to do. And my response is to get really angry. And it's like, what are you doing, Jay? Like, that's like really dramatic. The responses of the shadow are super dramatic because I mean, I feel like we are both conscious of them and they're still coming out, like
Oh,
doing their
all the
thing. So I
time.
can't say that self-awareness is going to get you really anywhere. That's just really first baby step, first toe in the water.
Yeah.
But it's like the process of making it conscious is different than just being aware of it. You know, it's
Completely.
actually being like, I'm consciously going to cry about this because this is something that I feel is worth my tears. Whereas I'm like, I know a lot of situations, I'm like, this is not worth my anger. But the best I can do is say, I need to go meditate for 10 minutes. And they know I'm angry when I say that. I'm like, sorry, I need to step away and go meditate. And it's like, that's the best I can do right now because otherwise I'm going to open my mouth. I'm going to say some condescending shit, some rude shit, because that's my triggered response. That's how I let the anger out. I say some rude shit. I act like I know more than I do. Shadow. And then I'm like, actually, I don't know shit. You were just trying to be nice. We were just trying to have an honest conversation. You were telling me that you were hurt. Okay, let's start back over now that I've meditated. But how can we make our anger or our tears a little more conscious and intentional and not just have them spilling out whenever we react to something because that's so unproductive to the what we're trying to do in those interpersonal situations, you know?
Yeah. And I think that it's also not to say that there is no room for those type of emotions. It's not about repressing those things. It's about like
Yes.
knowing that you have the agency and autonomy over your reactions to say like, even though I want to cry about this in this situation, it's not going to be helpful, productive. We're not going to continue to make any progress if I start crying right now. So if
Mm.
I can, I know I feel this way, maybe I can not cry, take a step away, come back to it, and have like a good cry later.
Yeah.
Anger is one of those things that I think people have there's a lot of stigma around anger and who's allowed to be angry and who's not, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
like, I think anger is one of those things that should be okay to express without, like, if someone's mad at me, they should be able to be mad at me without me being like, no, it's not okay for you to be mad. You
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that we could all stand to get a little bit more comfortable when someone's angry.
I think we could all stand to get a little bit more comfortable with the entire range of emotions.
Absolutely.
Because absolutely sometimes I see someone cry and I'm like, ugh, like
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say, you know? And I'm like, that's stupid because I've cried. I've cried in front of people and it's like I do carry like this like I can't cry in front of people. I have to be
Mm-hmm.
strong, you know, because you get labeled as like being the strong person, then you're like, oh, I have to be strong all the time and I can't cry in front of people. And it's like, why not? And as you were speaking, I started having this thought. I think it got really like 5D, we're on some love shit now, but it's like, what if like when you were crying and that person was upset with you, what if you just said, can we cry together about this for a second? What kind of space would that open up for you to just be like, I see that you're upset with me. If you want to cry, I'll allow it because I want to cry too. And how much that changes than like you just crying and then that person thinks, wow, I came to tell you that you made me feel some type of way and now you're crying. Like, and then they're going to feel some type of way because they're like, wow, she's acting like I had attacked her, but all I said was like, this thing upset me, you know? And it's like, then it becomes a who said what, who did what. And I'm wondering, like me, in my moments of anger, I'm like, if you're angry about it, let's just be angry together. Let's go scream into a pillow. Let's go stomp around. Let's like get to the top of a mountain and scream at the top of our lungs and then have a cool conversation and see how that changes the dynamic if we were just like allowed to respond, if we felt as if we were allowed to respond the way that we respond, because that's just how we respond. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to get to a point where like anger isn't my first. I first of all, let me stand out and say I'm not necessarily an angry person. I'm usually like a pretty happy go lucky person, but anger is my response to feeling like I'm being put in a corner, you know?
Yeah.
And what if we could just all have our like baby in a corner responses and just like a love language be like, oh, I know her response is this, so I know she's not mad at me, this is just how she reacts to these kind of situations. And that could be like the collective shadow work where we're all just like, let's notice our shadows and like be willing to work with them and not try to create this society where the only acceptable responses are like calm, level-headed conversations about shit that hurts us. Because who the fuck can do that? I can't have a calm, level-headed conversation about shit that hurt me. Like, I've never had that happen in my life. Waiting for the day, but like, I don't know. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
coming.
I do. I think that that is like a brilliant concept of like, we know our love language, right? Like,
Right.
what's our disagreement language? Like,
Yes.
what's my like emotional response to a situation that upset me? And I think that that's something that you can discover through the asking of these questions. And when you
Yes.
know you're about to come into a situation, the same way, like, I love that we have started talking about our love languages, and I love
Me
that we've
too.
started talking about, like, I know this is what feels super supportive to me. And I think that it's equally valid to say, like, I know the way that I respond to situations that upset me, and I want to be mindful of the way that you respond to situations that upset you, so when we
Yes.
have a disagreement, at least we're both coming in knowing the
Yes.
other person's way they communicate.
I mean, this is a fabulous brainstorm. I think we should call it our trigger language and we should develop this and write a book on it.
Or maybe there is one. If you're listening to this and you know a book about the ways people disagree, let us know.
Yeah.
But shadow work is one of those things that it just like all of these words and topics exists on such a spectrum. And there's
Mm-hmm.
no one right way to do it. I think anytime you're asking questions of yourself, you're doing shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you are trying to understand a piece of yourself that the rest of the world may not see, or that you feel the rest of the world, your friends, your family, your coworkers, they don't interpret it the way that you do, and you're exploring that, that's shadow work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be like an end of the day beat yourself up session
Yeah.
about like, this is what I do wrong, this is what happened to me when I was 5 that made me do this. It can just be like, I had this reaction today, why did I have that reaction?
Almost going into your own emotional space with like a scientist mind, like we are
Yeah.
here to examine ourselves so that we can produce this knowledge of self that just goes above and beyond like whatever stories we've written, whatever boxes society's tried to put us in, whatever books we've read that said this is the way to be. It's like at a certain point we have to come and know that this is the way that I am,
Yes.
and I'm accepting of it fully. Even the part that was once in shadow, like, hey, this is here. I know this is that negative thing that sometimes comes up in me, but it's not negative. It's just different.
Yeah.
But okay, I wrote this list when I was in the process of doing shadow work. I wrote this list. I feel like maybe this is something we can put in the show notes. It's a very long list.
Mm.
But I just wrote a list of questions, of confrontations, and I'm going to read a couple of them. A lot of them have come up for us in this conversation, but why am I like this? Why do I feel insecure about this part of myself? Why did I react in that way? Why is this triggering to me? Why am I still thinking about this years later? Am I always going to be like this? Why do I hate these qualities in myself? Why am I shocked by my verbal, physical, emotional response to that? Why do I assume that no one cares about what I have to say? Why do I assume that my presence bothers people? The list goes on. There's so many
Yeah.
questions of just like, why are we making these assumptions on of ourselves, or why are we putting ourselves in these boxes that we don't feel like we necessarily fit into?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes. It's a long ass list. It's like 60 questions.
That's really beautiful, though. I think just to share and put that out there for people, and it's also like, you can just take it one at a time.
Yeah.
If like, you know one of those is what you can handle today, amazing. And
Yeah.
I also think there can be a lot of value in asking yourself the same question like week to week.
Yeah.
Maybe you just
Yeah.
work on one of those things for like a whole month,
Mm-hmm.
and start to see that pattern of, this is what happened that made me feel that way.
Totally.
And
Totally.
then it's something that at least you're like, okay, I know this, so when I'm confronted with it, I can proceed with that knowledge.
Yeah. And I
of
love the
myself.
way, yeah, I love the way that you offered that as an option because I think a lot of the times people are sitting down and saying, hey, what are the 8 shadow words that trigger me the most? How am I working on these 8 things? But it's like, if we really like are either using the water to bring it up or moving the sun to shine a light on it, either one, it's like you can only focus on one thing at a time. Like we talk about priorities and we're like, we have this long list of 80 priorities, but it's like, no, you can really only have one priority at a time. Basically, I mean, unpopular opinion, but that is of what I think. So it's like, just focus on one priority. And I think there is, it's not going to come to the tip of my tongue because I don't like speaking in these trite isms, but it's definitely like a manifestation, like jargon where it's like what you, I don't know, it's like something like what you think is what happens, or what
Mm-hmm.
you call attention to is what is, you know? So it's just kind of like, let's shine a light on it every day. You know, shine a light on the thing that you think is your shadow every day. And pretty soon it'll be bathed in sunlight because you've spent
Yeah.
every day talking about it, every day unearthing it. And you're like, wow, this isn't as bad as I thought it was, you know?
Yeah. Or it's like, I think that there are, it's so interesting, right? Like we spend our whole lives with ourselves and it's still, we are constantly discovering new things about the ways that we think and feel. And I think the way that we grant other people, people in our lives, people we love, we really grant them permission. We grant ourselves permission to like learn about them and to
Mm-hmm.
like allow space for their growth and their changes. And, sometimes it may upset us, but ultimately, for people we love, we're like, yeah, you grew, I see that you've
Mm-hmm.
you've done this thing. But it's like, I feel like we're not always as willing to get as intimate with ourselves
Yeah.
and say like, oh, you've grown,
Mm-hmm.
even in a month, even in a week. That if you keep coming back to that same question of like, why don't I like this about myself? Or this word keeps coming up and making me upset. Why is that? And if you just
Mm-hmm.
work on that one thing and give yourself the space to be intimate with yourself and know yourself really fully, I think that it just gives you a little more grace in
Yeah.
everything you do when you can just know and understand. And it's so funny. We said like in our first episode, it just comes back to like, how do we love each other? How do we love ourselves every time?
Yes.
And I think that that's really what, by doing shadow work or inner work or whatever you want to call it, we're really just trying to get to a place where we can love ourselves, all of ourselves, our whole self. How do we love?
Hasn't that been the point of
Yes,
every conversation?
it is. Even if we say it in every single episode we do, all of these, the whole point of just like wellness and living well and being well is just love.
Yes.
It's just, how do we love ourselves? How
Yes.
do we love each other?
It's so true. It's so funny because we go through, every time we've done this, we go through these hour-long conversations and then we're like, but the point is just love yourself.
Yeah.
Just and as we redefine what it means to be well in a modern world, it's to be a person that loves him or herself, themselves in this world. And that's hard. It's hard to fully love ourselves when much of this world, much of the structure of this world, much of the system that operate this world have told us that we are not enough, that we are not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, we are not on the right path, we're not doing anything right unless we fit into this mold. That's just the work of society. And it's a huge bummer. I know that I think we should definitely get into the collective on another episode, just talking
Mm-hmm.
about the collective and the collective energy. But I've lately been really trying to separate society from the collective, because
Yes.
collectively, as individuals of part of this collective human experience, we all are rooting for each other to just be able to live our fucking lives and not have to fit into society. But then when we play our role in society, we're like, do the thing, do it right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even my, even like our political involvement is very, either you're right or you're wrong. It's all of that. And that's not collective energy. That's societal pressure.
Yeah.
And the difference is so important when we try to get to the bottom of all of this shadow work, make sure that we're coming through this. And and then finding the love and the honor from like that collective perspective instead of saying, this is how I fit in society and now I'm okay with it. Like, let's say fuck society when it comes to shadow work.
Yeah.
This was a good conversation. I think we
It
could talk about shadow
was.
work for a long time because I have like a
Truly.
million shadow things. I could bring up my next one.
Oh,
It's good. And hearing yours and the work you're doing, I'm like, shit, that's work I'm doing too. And just to be able to unearth it and be like, wow, you're definitely not the only one keeping secrets, let me tell you.
yeah. And I think that that's, as, as shadow work becomes more of the norm, I think that if we started talking to each other about it and the kinds of unearthing that we're doing within ourselves, just like everything else, we would find that we are all in on a more similar journey than we would have
Yeah.
thought. we're
Yeah.
in we're in more similar places than we would have thought, and even if we're having totally different experiences, we can still find overlap.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's so beautiful.
it
Wow, that
is.
was beautiful.
If anyone has, obviously, like, neither of us are shadow work coaches. I'm not a shadow work expert. I am a hardcore Googler. So um but if you have questions, if you want to share your own experiences of shadow work with us, please do.
Yes.
And we are here to just like honor that work that you're doing and acknowledge it and say thank you for getting to know yourself. Thank you for listening to us and our experiences. And yeah, let us know how all of that resonated for you, or if it did, or if
Yeah.
you're like, that's not shadow work, I don't do it like that. Like, let us know.
Let us know how you do shadow work. I feel
Yeah.
like the more ways that the more modalities,
Yeah,
modality is another word, but the more ways that we can figure out how to do shadow work, the better of a track that we're on.
for sure.
I, I definitely want to hear more. And if we can be supportive for you and say, hey, you're going through that, so are we, then we
Totally.
are more than here for that. Because I mean, Taylor and I shared 2, 3 things. If Taylor and I have those few things that we mentioned in common, then think how much that all of us with all these people out in the world have in common and how much we're all on this same path. So many of us are all doing the same work, I think is what it comes down to. And I think there is strength in numbers and there is very powerful and potent energy that comes from knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah,
Let us know, and let us know if anything came up in this discussion, any words that you heard where you were like, what does that mean? Because then we can define those too.
okay. What's the vibe?
I know the vibe. My vibe is so silly. So I'm going to ask you what's the vibe first.
Okay. My vibe's a little silly too, but I'm gonna roll with it because I do feel really excited about my vibe.
What is it?
Okay. My vibe this week is the Netflix docuseries
Oh, yes.
The Last Dance, about the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. And that is a heavy vibe. That is my vibe this week. It is yeah, it so I watched it, and I watched it, we watched like one episode a night for however many episodes it was. And it touched me in a way that I just was not expecting. I'm not a huge sports person. I've literally never watched an entire basketball game in my life. Um but obviously I know who Michael Jordan is. And but I don't think I really understood like the scope of him as a cultural icon. And I didn't really, I didn't know that much about him. And I was so inspired by his work ethic and his drive. And as someone who is just not a competitive person at all, I would literally if someone was like, I want to win, I'd be like, okay, you win. Like, it really lit something up in me that was like, maybe I do want to win something.
I love that.
And it made me feel like, also like, yeah, I could stand to work a little harder at literally anything I do ever. I was just like so impressed with the athleticism and the commitment and just basically everything about Michael Jordan. Also, he's just very cool, like a very cool guy.
That's a
So
great vibe. That's
Yeah, so
inspiration.
that's my vibe. I am fully a 90s Chicago Bulls fan now, and couldn't tell you a single thing about basketball in the present day, but super, super inspirational. Highly recommend if you are looking for something to watch that will make you feel sporty and cool and excited about doing stuff.
Working
Be
hard.
active. Yeah,
That
working
sounds,
hard
that's
work.
beautiful.
It was really, yeah, it made me feel just like, yes,
I
lit
want to
up.
feel that.
That,
And
yeah, it
it's
was
funny that you
amazing.
can feel that from watching TV.
Yeah, but it was so like I would watch that at night and I would wake up because I've been like right now, right? We're in the at the time of this recording, we're very much in the process of like rolling out this podcast.
Yeah.
And I've been doing like editing work on it and doing and trying to like gather stuff for social. And you know, we met up and had this full planning day, and it was happening while I was watching that documentary. And I was like, could I do any of this with just like an eighth of the energy of Michael Jordan?
And that, I mean, I think you've brought an eighth of the energy.
I
I think
think
you've done great.
yeah, I feel it has made me feel super energized, super excited, and just like, yes, I'm gonna work in a different in a different way. Like I feel like I'm rewriting the rules around work of my life right now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's just made me feel like super excited.
I love that. Okay. I
Yeah.
love that. That
Okay,
is
so
such a good vibe of the week. And mine's low
no, I
key
want to hear it.
casual.
Okay, so what's
So,
your
for
vibe?
anyone who knows me, I am just like, I will just wake up in the morning and walk outside and like, this is what you're gonna get. And I'm just like, I'm not doing anything for, I put on lotion after I shower. I honestly, I'm gonna put it out there. I wash my face with water. That's just who I am. There's no products in my house. My friend has been telling me about this clay for your body and your face for literally years. And I was like, that doesn't sound like me. That sounds like a lot of work. Like, I'm not going to do that. And, you know, quarantine got me. And I was like, I'm going to get the clay. So
Yes.
I bought, it's called Aztec Secret Indian Healing Clay. And it's from the Mayan. Do you know it?
I have
It's like,
it. I
oh,
love
it's so
it.
good.
That is like it's like it's amazing.
It's
Go
so
yeah.
good. I literally, I mean, I don't do anything to my appearance. I just don't. And it's like this morning I mixed it. It said mix it with the raw apple cider vinegar, and I mixed
Mm.
it up and I was like, this looks weird. And then I just put it on my face and my face is so soft. I just was like, what happened? So now I'm envisioning a whole ritual where I just put it all over my body, and then that's what I do on a Saturday night. And I think that my whole body could be like a soft baby.
Mm.
And self-care. I mean, at the, the core of that, at the core of that is I've been coming back to self-care. And I think that getting the mask was just a way of saying, Jay, take care of yourself, you know, and whatever way that feels good. And I went through a period, maybe for the last 3 weeks, while you were having creative inspiration. Thank God I could ride your coattails because I was feeling really not inspired. And for the last 3 weeks, I was feeling pretty like down in the dumps. And it got to a point where I couldn't blame it on my period anymore because I'm like, no, well, it's been the full cycle that I've felt shitty. So what's going on? But finally, I just got to this point where I was like, okay, I just got to allow myself to like feel bad. And as soon as I like let that happen, then I was like, oh, I want to take care of myself again. And so I like got some clay and I got some cute stuff for my nails, and I just came back to self-care. And sometimes it is doing a little work on the outside makes you feel better on the inside. And it's not to say that beauty is only skin deep, but it is to say that taking care of yourself can do some help you do the inner work as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think that's a great vibe. And that is also a great mask.
It is a great
It's a
mask.
great mask. Very affordable. You get a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get a lot. You can make I think you could probably make, no joke, I'm not exaggerating, like 400 masks with
I'm pretty sure.
so if you want to cover your full body in it, it's like you're barely making a dent.
That's what I think. I think it would be no sweat to cover my full body. I did like quite a bit because I didn't like know how
Mhm.
it would work. And then I was like, oh shit, this is a lot. And then I took it into my mom's bathroom. I was like, Mom, have some of this mask. And she was like, ooh, she did it too.
Oh, cute.
I'm all about it now, though. I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a weekly thing. I'm going to be soft as a baby's butt, and it's just going to be great.
Yes. And I love that vibe.
Yay, thanks. I thought it was like a silly vibe, but then I was like, no, nothing
Oh,
silly.
that's a great vibe. I think I'm going to go do that mask right now.
Yes, go do it. And then we can all say that we were part of the collective clay mask experience this
Yeah.
morning.
I'm going to put on that mask and rewatch the first episode of The Last Dance and just like really soak in our vibe.
Get you pumped. That's like a really good way to just embody the whole vibe situation that we put out today.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you can continue carrying this energy into our podcast, that's like top.
Just every time I need a little boost, I'm like, okay, what amount of energy would it take Michael Jordan to do this? He goes so hard.
Yeah.
It's wild. But
He goes
I'm like,
hard.
I'm not trying to go that hard all the time. I'll be honest. I'm trying to go that hard like a little bit of the time.
Just like a tiny bit, but like a
Yeah, just a
tiny
little
bit is
bit.
enough, honestly. So, okay, last part's last. Please leave us a 5-star review.
Oh my gosh, we actually have to tell you also, we did come up with a cute name for this offering. So if you send us a 5-star review, we will send you a remedy revealed.
Yes. So that's the name of our creation. We've come together. This is a joint baby project. It's
Mm-hmm.
literally part Taylor, part Jay. It's called Remedies Revealed. And each week we take the card of the week that we brought up at the top of the conversation. This week for the shadow work episode, it is the Two of Wands reversed. And so we just give a little overview of the card, and then on the one sheet, it'll be a 2 sheet because it's one sheet of how to embody the energy of the card, how to take the energy of the card into the week, and then the next sheet will just be a recipe that relates to that card. But on our remedy revealed, we'll offer the card,
Mm-hmm.
offer an explanation of it, then offer utilizations for the card. So I mean, this week it'll probably be ways to bring in shadow work, and ways to confront your shadow in a loving way. And then a recipe that relates to shadow work. And that's fun. It can be a recipe or a home remedy, but we're really excited just to share ways to make the things that we talk about this easy to bring into your practical life, easy to implement and to, take out of the mind and into the body.
Yeah. And just to try stuff out.
Yeah.
See what works for you.
See what
Um
sticks.
yeah. So if you leave us a 5-star review and then let us know, you can DM us on Instagram, you can tell us on Twitter, you can send us an email. Let us know like, "Hey, left you a 5-star review," and we will email you our remedy revealed for this week.
Yay.
Yeah.
I love it. I just think they're
Same.
so cute. I'm just
They are.
jazzed about everything we do at this point.
Same. They are. They're really cute. They're really cute. It's a really fun way too if you're like just starting to work with tarot, or if you don't work with tarot at all but you just think like cards are cute and fun, and you want some ways to incorporate different kinds of energy into your life. This is just a fun little way to do that, and a way for us to say thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with that, thank you for listening to this episode. Let us know what you
Thank
want us
you.
to talk about. We've got some really fun stuff coming up. So, after this, we will have episodes weekly and they'll drop on Fridays. And we're so excited. We're so excited to just like make this a weekly thing that we get to come and talk to all our friends, talk to each
Yeah.
other.
And if you have any questions about what's going on in the wellness world, things that are coming up for you, things that you'd like to hear us talk about, things that you'd like to work through, please share them with us. We are all ears, and that's why we're here.
Yes. Okay, so that's it. That's our show. We'll see you.
Yay!
We'll talk to you all next week.
See you next week.
Bye.